Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Big 4-0, Night 40 of the Orphan Tales Live quarantine reading series. Hi, good evening. Hope you're having a good one. It's a very misty night outside. You can barely see 3 inches in front of you. It's been one of those kind of days. I'm feeling not well at all, and everybody in the house is under deadline, and my pressure cooker slash slow cooker broke because apparently it's the time of all kitchen appliances breaking. So I've had it with Planet Earth today, and broke like partway through a pressure cooking cycle. So if I hadn't been there to watch it, it could have blown that lid across the house. So that was exciting. Yeah, someone made the brownies. I hope you enjoyed the brownies. Yeah, so on today. But at least we've got tonight. We've got the sort of conclusion of one of the internal cycles. The Black Pope tonight, Black Papas. Yeah. So we've got quite a chunk to get through tonight. So let me start the intro business. You've all heard this before. It's a boring little ditty where I say my name 1,000 times. You can find music based on this book at sjtucker.com. You can buy these books at your local independent bookseller's web portal. If you would like to support my local independent bookseller, it is printbookstore.com. You can find me on Twitter at Cat Valenti. You can subscribe to my Patreon at Cat Valenti as well, which is an exciting place to be at the moment. The poll is still going as to what I'm going to be reviewing this month. We still do not have a decision between Voyager and Dark, and we've got other things that are sort of coming up behind it, so get over there and vote. You can catch up in the archive at Cat Valenti Live on YouTube. You can ask me questions when the stream is over, but do try to think of them while I'm reading, because dead air while we wait for typing is terrible for everyone. And you can put something in the tip jar, which is on my Instagram profile, as well as my YouTube profile and my website at catherinemvalenti.com. You don't have to. These are totally free. But if you would like to, it would be deeply, deeply appreciated by our household, who is going through some tough times, as I'm sure all of you are. And thank you so much to Mandy, John, and William for tipping me last night. You guys are my absolute heroes. I really, really appreciate it. You are the best. And anyone who does, I will thank you by name on the next stream. Okay, I think that's all of it. So let's get into it. Let's get that bread, as they say. Uh-oh. I think I lost... God, now I say uh-oh in the same, like, tone as my son, or maybe he says it in my tone. There we go. There's my big dog here. All right. I have a sip here from my throat. I feel like my voice has dropped an octave since this started doing a reading every night. The tale of the game. Of course, we knew she would come, sooner or later. We knew she would come leading all the hordes of Shadukium, all the horrors of the Rose Dome, all the horrors the Rose Dome could produce. She did not disappoint us, and came riding a great black antelope whose slender legs were hooved in fire, and whose baleful eyes seemed to look in all directions at once. Behind her came her legions, Jinn with beards of smoke and spells in their saddlebags, monopods drafted out of their ghettos, their feet armored and bristling with iron spikes, centaurs and archers with 12 arms, even a few manticore bred in who knows what foul cage. And the humans screaming their war cries like frenzied ravens, all those men with swords flashing, drunk on hatred of the Golden City and adoration of the pale-haired Pappas. But she did not bring her damned army through the silver spires of the Salmon Gate. She bade them halt in the green fields outside the ringed towers, and they halted. They quieted their cries and laid themselves out on the clover as though they had come to a country picnic, so completely were they in her power. And Ragnhild, first and second of her name, the Black Papas of Shadukium, entered the holy city alone, without even a knife at her belt. She entered it like a postulant, with nothing but her torn dress fluttering in the wind, and her pale hair streaming behind her like a battle standard. And alone she walked to the center of the city, to the tower of the Pampas, and no one dared to stop her. But all who could lay down their duties followed in her wake like a wave of flesh. Slowly and without a sound, she seemed to glide over the blue-pebbled streets to the plain tower with its deer-skin-slung windows, and strode through the door as if no one could contest her right to do so, as if it were her own house. We were closeted with Yashna, in conference as we so often are these days. My brothers and I immediately growled, our hackles rose, ready to defend our Pampas from whatever dank, filthy magic Ragnhild had brought with her into that sacred place. But the apostate, her face, as fair and terrible as it had been in the depths of our dreams, raised up her hands in a gesture of unity. Peace, my children. I have not come to fight with you or to molest your poor Yashna. Smooth your venerable furs and cool the blood in your veins. I have come on an errand of friendship. As we have seen, brave dogs, you have no power over me. So I will say it again. Calm yourselves. Yashna said nothing, but smiled imperceptibly, like a leaf rustling in the faint autumn wind. Bartholomew snarled in her stead. An errand of friendship, with that band of creatures at your back. Ragnhild smiled coolly. I have brought them for my own defense. Surely you do not expect me to breach the gates of Alanur with nothing but my own skin to protect me against the Dragi. I know too well the fate of innocent maids when the ire of the towers are raised. She lifted her delicate wrists and shook the golden manacles that still hung there like a dancer's bracelets. The high, thin sound echoed in the chamber. Balthazar's fiery eyes narrowed to slits. She cannot be trusted, mother. You must call on the Dragi now, before she has unleashed whatever magic she is hiding. And here we have one of Michael's fantastic illustrations. Ragnhild laughed, a sound like glass breaking or ice shattering over a running river. Surely you do not think I could hide much in this, dear wolf, she said, gesturing to the wide tears in her violet gown. But enough! I did not come to speak with those I have already welcomed in my own hall. I came to treat with my sister, and put all this misunderstanding behind us. Yashna stirred in her chair and peered out at the black Pampas, whose smile seemed to glow with forgiveness and kindness. Very well, my child. Speak with me, she said, her voice steady and deep. The Caliph has declared me the rightful Pampas, not once but twice. He has declared Alanur a territory of the Caliphate and demands tribute. You cannot refuse these things. Even a city of heaven must bow to the laws of earth. Indeed, I was anointed long before you, sweet lady, in the days when Sveti performed her heresy. By rights, this city is mine. I will take it by force if I must, but I do not wish to. Abdicate in my favor, I will allow you to go into seclusion in the Tower of the Dead, your home. All will be peaceful, and the city will go on as it always has. Surely you must see how greatly I have been wronged by Alanur, and understand that I am not a wicked woman. I asked only for what is mine by the hand of the Caliph and the hand of heaven. Yashna rose from her seat, her yellow robe sighing behind her, and put out her hands to Ragnhild, taking those slim white forearms in her own withered brown palms. No one would deny that in your youth and innocence you were wronged terribly, not only by Gifron, but by the Caliph himself. We know your sad tale, and we grieve for the gentle and bright-hearted girl you once were. If we could restore life to you, please believe we would do so without a moment's hesitation. But it is not in our power. It would not even have been in our power to restore what strange and alien life you have taken for yourself in this body. Yashna paused, her eyes as full of pity as a well with water after a storm. But you cannot believe I will simply hand this city to you. You know that. You know in that stranger's heart that what you ask is wrong. The child who came to Shadukium innocent of the schemes around her is still within you, and she knows I will not give you what you want. Ragnhild continued to smile in her bright, cold way, and her hands tightened on Yasna's arms. Then I will burn it to the ground, and let my centaurs piss on your altars, spill their wine over every holy text in this clutch of hovels. And when I have finished, the Caliph will send his men to rape your nuns and count out every stone of this carrion town for the treasury. Her smile deepened and grew even sweeter. Yasna's expression did not change. The Caliph cannot and will not touch us. Why do you think he has set up little girls in his bank vaults instead of assaulting us directly? Why has he never marched an army to the brink of our borders? He knows the Draghi are very charming and debonair, but they are decadent. They are not a tenth of our power. The heavens themselves will crack and spill their mortar onto the heads of any soldier who dares touch the flesh of a priestess in this city. You will find the same if your monsters broach the gate. Please believe I do not lie to you. I am of the dead, and the dead have no need of fiction. You think we are at an impasse, and that to avoid bloodshed I will surrender to your smile or your kiss. Yasna released the apostate's arms, her dark eyes flashing suddenly like iron striking. We are not at an impasse. And the dead care nothing for whether the blood of the living is spilled. Bring your army within the salmon gate, and I swear to you by the 7 corpses of heaven, not a shred of their skin will be left when the moon rises. Ragnhild's smile faltered slightly. Her eyes seemed to shiver within themselves, and for a moment, only for a moment, I could see the creature she must have been before the Caliph had her, and I pitied her. May the bow bend in forgiveness. But it was a moment soon past, and the seraphic smile had returned, harder and brighter than ever. You cannot frighten me with the oaths of the dead, old woman. I am dead. I am a wraith on this earth. I have crossed into shadow while you and your priests sit playing with toy gravestones in your tower. Do not speak of what you do not know. Yasna's gentle gaze returned, like spring returning to a thicket of pine boughs. Stop, my daughter. You do not need to brag to me of your putrefaction. I believe you. But I have a solution, if you will hear it. In recognition of Gifron's mutilation of your first body, I will extend to you a single chance to take the papacy in truth. Ragnhild leaned forward eagerly, scenting her victory. You wish to rule the dreaming city. You must excel in all its ways. Play with me a single game of Lo Shen. If you best me, I will go into seclusion as you ask, and you will ascend to the tower without the slightest argument and without battle. No one will contest you. You will rule as well as you are able. If you lose, however, you must disband your army and take the vows of one of our towers. Enter it as a novice and pledge yourself to our city for the rest of your days. In the anointed city, this is the way disputes are settled. If you would rule us, you must behave as one of us. Show me that you are the rightful Pappas. Show me that you exceed us in all things. Ragnhild seemed to laugh, but no sound issued from her rosy mouth. Her eyes glittered like snowflakes catching the sun. You cannot be serious. A single game to decide 500 years of history. Were it not that once my predecessor harmed you, I would simply kill you where you stand. Ragnhild was silent for a long time, studying her opposite number. There was no sound but breathing in the tower, the shallow, quick sighs of all of us waiting to learn what would become of this infant war. Finally, Ragnhild seemed to come to a decision, and leaned forward, her shimmering hair brushing Yasna's wrist. She cupped the older woman's face in her hand, almost as a sister might, comforting her sibling with a touch. She tilted her head and pressed her lips to Yasna's dry mouth, kissing her deeply, passing all of her murky magic through her lips and into the body of the ancient Pappas. When the kiss was ended, Yasna remained as she was, her smile perhaps a little sadder and a little more rueful than before. We are both creatures of the dead, my dear. Let us not try to befuddle each other with these cheap glamours. It does not become us. Play my game, as I have now played yours. I'll go back to your army and see if the prancing Draghi are the worst we can muster to keep an infidel from our halls. I thought for a moment Ragnhild would cry. I cannot think why I would imagine that haughty face could break into tears, but I did. I will play. Ragnald said quietly, with great dignity, the dignity, one might say, of a Pappas. Yashna took her arm in a grandmotherly gesture and led her into the courtyard outside the tower, and my brothers and I carried the vast ceremonial board into the sunlight, where the nuns and monks, priestesses and oracles, brothers and sisters, gathered to watch the greatest game in the history of Alinor. How can I describe for you the spooling thread of a single game of Lo Shen, let alone the greatest game played in the annals of the spheres? Should I tell you that the throng was hushed as grasses on a still summer day? How the merchants and the oracles and the patricides gathered close in, how the living and the dead peered over their shoulders for one glimpse of the apostate taking her place at the board? That the light seemed to fall into Ragnald's hair and pool there, so that her head was ablaze in a halo of light. That Yashna was ever Yashna, calm, quiet as the reflection of a star, her head solemn and gray and never aflame. That the whole thing looked like a painting and not like anything that was actually happening before us. Or shall I orate upon the nature of the game, its perfect complexity, the slide of stone pieces on a round stone board? What came first, the city or the game? Surely it must have been the game. How else could the towers and roads be arranged in the patterns of the 1,000 combinations of Lo Shen? Yet the game contains pieces called pagoda towers, andragi, and papases, and gods. If the city came first, perhaps the game is no more than a dumb imitation of Alinor in all its sapphire-paved glory. But if the game existed in the shadowy years before the light of the dreaming towers, then perhaps there is some secret locked within its moves, some prophecy which would tell us, could we but read its meaning, the fate of all these roofs and doors. Perhaps the Papases were made to defeat each other within the game, because one day there would be 2 Papases to face each other in the city. Perhaps all our lifetimes of study of this game were meant to culminate on that morning, in that sunlight thin as bones. I do not know, little Sigrid, if they have begun to teach you the many formations of Lo Shen yet. If not, they will soon. We spend half our lives in study of this game, and all our internecine disputes are solved with it. For the object is to topple the god of the opposing player, the single piece that rests at the center of the board, nestled within 13 concentric spheres, unable to move unless it is to defeat its opposite number. It is poetic, and it is political. And so it came to pass that 2 women sat, quiet as nuns, at a great blue board the size of a giant's shield. Their hands flashed over the pieces like crow's wings waving, pale triremes and dark pagodas rising and falling. Ranks of dragi eradicated at a blow. Intricate combinations arose like glass webs, the Papases as perfectly matched to each other as sisters. Chang-O and Tian-Fei, Pa-Na and Pan-Yang. For a long while, no one could see a clear advantage. The pieces merely circled the board like autumn leaves caught in a whirlpool. Ragnald's hair curled around her hips as a cat's tail may its haunches, and her soft smile never faltered, even as Yashna exquisitely executed Mang Chin-Yi combinations that swept her 3rd Pappas from the board. I watched the sun move over their bent heads, cutting its path through the sky. The struggle for the city passed without a word between grandmother and grandchild, and neither I nor my brothers nor the ranks of dragi with their silver helmets flashing could effect a single slide of a pagoda from sphere to sphere. It drove us mad, of course, standing in the sidelines. In the silence, my fur bristled as though it had been set aflame. But we are all of us, no matter what our towers, accustomed to standing by while our mistresses performed their magic. Finally, Yashna brought her trireme forward in a quick slashing diagonal, just the way a ship slips between gusts of wind to stay on course. A ripple of caught breath swept through the crowd. The glistening piece, carved out of dark blue stone in the shape of a ship at full sail, completed her move, Shun Ifu Jen. All 4 of her Papases stood around the center sphere, within a pagoda tower, slim and gleaming, 1 ring behind them. It is an inescapable pattern, and Ragnald's sea-colored eyes flickered in anger, seeing what we all did, that her god was trapped, and there was no move she could make to save it. Shangmu, my daughter, I have slain your god. Yashna smiled in her way, a mother's smile which at once glows with pride at her child's performance and softens in regret at their shortcomings. She then stretched out her arm over the embattled board and plucked the apostate's god from the center sphere, holding the ends of the featureless blue column, pale as water in moonlight, in either hand. She bowed in the ritual fashion and broke the piece in half. It takes great strength to end a game in the old way, the way of the first Nurians, whose honor and shame were measured by the number of broken gods their altars held. Ragnhild, to her credit, took the severed pieces and bowed in her turn. Her face held no expression, but her cheeks burned in rage or in humiliation I could not tell for myself. She held her god at her side, fist tightening around the pieces until blood began to drip, thick and viscous, from her palm. The Netweaver's tale continued. Bag stopped and stretched in the sun, stroking his silky muzzle with strong hands. The snow of my tower swirled lazily around him, unaffected by the warm sunlight. "Is the army still at the gate?" I asked breathlessly. He just smiled toothily. "I can't say I understand her, you know. My brothers and I, with a company of Draugi, took her to the gate, and the great army stood there, black and red flags snapping in the wind. I thought she would order them to flatten the city. I thought she would try to kiss us again and madden us into joining her. I thought she would conjure some terrible fiend and blow the blue streets of Alinor like a fiery wind. But where in women like her is the capacity to abide by an oath? But she did none of these things. She stared at her vast hoard with no tear in her gray eyes. Slowly she unlatched the golden manacles from her wrists and threw them to the dry earth. Her skin was red where they had chafed and rubbed her raw. She held out a white palm for a moment, and the air over it crackled silver and white, like a burning snowflake. Turning her hand over, the crackle of air shot down to the manacles, and they vanished, leaving nothing, not even dust. The Kynocephalus shook his head, as if unable to believe what he was describing. The moment those chains disappeared, the whole army shimmered and disappeared right alongside them. In their place were a few starving lizards, feral cats, and one horse so old and mistreated its ribs bowed like the bands of a wine cask. The spectacle was nothing more than glamours and mirages. Ragnhild's jaw clenched. "It is one thing," she whispered, her rage barely suppressed, "to command love and loyalty under the rose dome, where gold and beauty may buy any heart. It is another to bring them across the plains and pit them against a city they are certain is full of witches and messiahs. Another to lead them in the body of a dead girl, to lead them when they knew I had stolen it, when they thought me a ye, to be feared, but never one for whom they would risk death. They would not even risk dying in my presence, in terror that I would seize their corpses. They would not come." She sank to her knees and pulled the ragged shreds of her gown. What was I to do? 500 years, and they would not come. I had to try, didn't I? For the child I was before all this, I had to try. I sat back, stunned. All this had gone on while I was ensconced in prayer and study, with no notion of anything but icons of St. Sigrid and nautical illuminations. Not for the first time, I burned to have done with contemplation and witnessed those great deeds, the game, the army, the fall of the Black Papas, all for myself. I was never a very good student. But as I was rebelling against my tower in my heart, a great commotion arose in the distance. A cluster of folk were moving up the path toward the tower of St. Sigrid, kicking up dust like a ship leaving a white wake behind it. In the center of the throng was a woman with hair of pale gold that lay over her brow like a crown, and she wore a deep violet dress. My voice caught in my throat, and I stood, knees quivering, to greet them as they arrived. The Black Papas no more, wore a new set of manacles, plain iron, dull and grey. Her head was bent in anger or shame, I could not tell. She was given a choice, as you were, and she chose the Sigrids. Bag said, reaching across the threshold to touch my hair lightly. If nothing else, she takes with grace the punishment the seed-scattered earth deals her. You must take her in. No, I can't. I'm only a novice. I cannot accept a new Sigrid. Even a novice knows that she who guards the door is charged with the initiation of any postulant who appears on her watch. It is your duty now. Ragnhild raised her eyes to me, and I am not ashamed to say that I had never seen anything so beautiful as her silver gaze, the depth of feeling and sorrow and suppressed fury in her cold eyes. They searched me with a strange longing. When she spoke, the words were rote, taught to her by her captors, dead and empty and forced. But her voice was rough, like silk torn by sharp diamonds, and I believed truly that she wanted nothing more than to disappear into the tower and never emerge again. Please, Saint Sigrid, take me in from the storm and teach me to steer through darkness, for I am lost and cannot see the shore. I did not move for a long moment. Then slowly I reached out my hand to her and whispered, "Come, lady, I will cut your hair for you." Her hand slipped into mine, hard and cool. And that's it for tonight. We will pick up with The Pale Girl's Tale tomorrow. Less than 50 pages to go now, but it is quite a packed 50 pages. We've got a fucked up mermaid coming, and a lot of other things too. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask as we end our stream here? It's the awkward dead air. What was I thinking in the beginning that I should mention? Oh, that the whole like first of her name thing, I hadn't even read Game of Thrones yet at this point. So it's so crazy to me that phrasing ended up in there like long before I read Game of Thrones. So I feel very strange reading it now. It seems as though I copied, but I was not an early adopter of Game of Thrones. I wrote this in 2002. So no relation. Are the Yi based on anything? I don't think so. I could be wrong. I could be not remembering it right. The hungry ghosts in the second book are definitely based on an Indian myth. But I don't think the Yi are based on anything. I think they're mine. But there's, I would say that in the whole of the two books, there's probably, a dozen creatures that are completely original. Most of them come from real folklore and real mythology. A few of them I sneak in that are mine. It was probably good practice for Sebastian. Man, I would be, look, who knows how things will turn out. By the time he's old enough to read this, he probably isn't going to want me reading to him at night. But maybe he will. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, he gets read to quite a bit all the time. He's got about half the alphabet down now. He was just looking at the table with he's got these big foam letters and they were all laid out and he was like MOBH. So he's getting there. He'll be able to read himself before too long. But yeah, the Yi they're really awful. They're really frightening. Marrow is definitely like the darkest part of the book. It is messed up. I remember what Marrow is, believe me. And I actually do remember the process of coming up with Marrow. And remembering, well, I don't want to spoil anything for it. So remembering details from the first book, that felt like I had left myself a little trail of breadcrumbs. But yeah, the Yi are pretty bad. Well, I'll do my outro stuff while you guys think of any questions that you might have. You can find music based on these books and The City of Marrow at sjtucker.com. You can buy copies of these books from your independent local booksellers web portal. I would prefer you do that rather than Amazon or Barnes & Noble, although Barnes & Noble's not doing great these days. But they will all probably be fine. Your local store may not. My local store is printbookstore.com, and you are more than welcome and encouraged to support them. You can find me on Twitter at Kat Valenti. You can find me on Patreon at Kat Valenti, where there are all kinds of fun things going on this month, and a poll to determine exactly what they will be up right now, and it's all tied up. You can catch up in the archive on YouTube at Kat Valenti Live. And you can put something in the tip jar, which is on my Instagram profile, as well as my website at katherinemvalenti.com and my YouTube profile. You don't have to, these are totally free, but it is very difficult to be an artist and a freelancer right now, and it is a lot of work to put these together every night for you, even when I am sick as I am now. So if you are moved to toss a coin to your witch, it would be deeply, deeply appreciated by our household, and I will thank anybody who does by name on the next stream. Did anything in particular inspire the game of Lo Shen? So I love game craft, and I've always, I think that I got obsessed with a book called The Glass Bead Game when I was quite young, and the notion of like a whole culture set up around a game fascinated me from, I was 13 when I read that, and it fascinated me from then on, so I'm sure that a big part of it comes from The Glass Bead Game. They have a kind of university / city called Castalia, which is the purifying spring at the Oracle at Delphi. And it's their entire culture is set up around this game. But the Glass Bead Game is not. I mean, it's very hard to imagine what the Glass Bead Game actually is. They never really go in too deep into it, but it's some kind of combination of a board game and like a cultural reference game. So there's pieces, but you're also building chains of references. Like you're kind of just playing like the fanciest game of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, only Kevin Bacon is like Newton, and you have real pieces to work with. It's a very strange thing, but you know, it's supposed to be the deepest game of all time, and I just really enjoyed thinking of politics in that way, because of course politics is a game, and I didn't want to use chess. Everybody uses chess. Chess is, and I don't necessarily think that chess is even complex enough to give rise to cultures the way games and books do. But it's always the metaphorical game that gets used, so I wanted to make my own. I'm sure that it's Herman's fault in the end, who wrote the Glass Bead Game. If you don't know, I'm sure you all knew, Herman Hesse. Anybody else? Okay, well, I will see you guys tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Same fairy tale time, same fairy tale channel. I will tell you that we were watching Little Einsteins today, which is one of my son's favorite shows. And they ask like the kids watching questions a lot, and he's never answered them yet. Like he loves that they talk to him, but he doesn't talk back. And he answered one of the questions for the first time. And the question was this: I love fairy tales. Do you like fairy tales? And he went, yep. So there's my cute Bastion story for the day. That's too long for Twitter. Probably not too long for Twitter. So I will see you guys tomorrow. And I will be uploading to the archive tonight, so it will be complete by tomorrow morning. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.